All right, we're on. Hey, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Brian. Welcome to Thunder Nerds.
I'm Frederick Philip Von Weiss, and thank you for consuming the Thunder Nerds, a conversation with the people behind the technology that love what they do.
And do tech
good. Doing tech good. Pow! Hey, everybody, and speaking of doing tech good, we have a sponsor this year. We have Pantheon.io. Thank you, Pantheon. Pantheon provides a dev, test, and live environment for your sites. It's easy to back up your stuff. It's for WordPress, Drupal 7, Drupal 8. They are a great platform. Go check them out at Pantheon.io. I believe they make a baked lasagna on Tuesday, so check them out. Pantheon, boom.
I want lasagna.
I know, right? I love lasagna.
Why would you do that? I gotta
Speaking of lasagna, we have an amazing guest today. We have, let's go ahead and bring him in here. God, I'm so hungry. We have the honor to talk to, let me get all these points correct. Speaker, author, disliker of coffee and chocolate, and we'll get into that. Co-founder of An Event Apart, Eric Meyer. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's truly our honor. Curtsy. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. What you up to?
About 6'1".
Oh, that's cool. I'm 4.
I'm such a dad.
You and Frederick should really.
Oh man,
we're gonna get along just fine.
Yes, downhill from here.
Yes, exactly.
I like the puns.
Eric, where are you actually at right now?
I am actually in my home office in my home in Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't know if you were traveling because I know there's a lot of the event aparts coming up. Like you're going to be in DC coming up soon. You got Chicago, Denver, San Francisco. So you're traveling all over the world all the time.
Yeah, or at least all over the U.S. Although I'll also be in Belarus in September. Turns out. So, I just leaked a little info there. Sorry.
Exclusive.
I don't think it's been announced yet, but anyway, DC is at the end of July, and then it starts to roll like Chicago at the end of August, and then Denver in October, and San Francisco in December. So.
That's an interesting point that you brought up about the U.S. Do you have any aspirations, plans to bring it? I don't know, Canada, Mexico, somewhere else around the globe.
We've looked into it in the past. Logistically, it's even more complicated and expensive than you might imagine. So at the moment, we don't have any announced plans to go outside the U.S. But, that's the future has many wonders in it. So who knows?
It's true.
I want to go back to Cleveland real quick. Are you a sports ball fan? Were you excited about the Cavs? No.
I'm not really a sports ball fan. I was excited about the Cavs, I have to say, for all of my friends and acquaintances. Everybody was just so psyched, particularly the year that they went to the finals and won. Everyone was really excited. So it was nice to see everybody, because for those who don't follow the sports ball, or any sports ball really at this point, Cleveland is kind of one of those cities that never wins anything. I know this because I live here, right? Like the Browns perpetually in last place, and the Indians often in last place, and the Cavs and blah.
Yeah.
But then
and
suddenly
they won one game, the Browns, by the way, just for context, out of how many games it was?
I don't even know. It's been a while. The annual cry is just wait till next year, and to which most people say when you'll lose again, right? But for this short window, the Cavs were amazing, and also the Indians did really well. The year the Indians lost to the Cubs was also the same year that the Cavs won the NBA championship, right? And the Indians came within that close of also winning the World Series. So for this brief moment, everybody was super excited. The people who were sports ball enthusiasts. We're kind of back to the. I mean, it's not. I guess it's not as. I don't know. I'm not really paying attention, but
just curious. My Rachel, my partner, she's from Cleveland, so I was excited when I saw that you're Cleveland.
Yep.
You ever play anything? You ever play any sports ball?
I played soccer in junior high school.
Nice.
So, or football for those of you who are overseas from us. I did that. I did a little bit of Little League, but it was never really my thing. I was clumsy and uncoordinated.
That's shocking. I can't imagine that.
I say was like that's a past tense thing.
Yeah.
So, yep. But I've lived
You know
here. God, I've lived here now. What year is this? It's 2019. I've lived here almost 31 years.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been there a while.
Yeah.
You can officially call yourself like Clevelander. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
It's 30
what
years.
they say?
is the
Clevelander?
mark.
actually,
30 years is the mark, and then after that you can. So he's just in.
Yeah.
Hey, do you mind if we, for the people that, and I know we've actually talked about this when we were at an event apart, but for the people that don't know, maybe a little bit of the context of the story of an event apart, I love the story about how it started in 2005. Do you mind if we just kind of touch on that briefly?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, what it comes down to is so Jeffrey Zeldman and I had been speaking at a lot of conferences. We'd end up at the same conferences, and we started to sort of get to know each other. And every year at South by Southwest, we went to a restaurant that no longer exists, Las Manitas, I think it was called. And we get breakfast, like away from everybody. This was back when South by Southwest was something you actually could get away from and still be in Austin. And we would have these breakfasts, and we started to say things like, we started to talk about the conferences we've been to. I said, God, so many conferences we go to are just bad. Like, they're not a good experience. They might have good speakers, but they're not a good experience for anybody. Maybe we could do better. And maybe in doing that, we could also serve an audience that we think doesn't have a conference, which is the kind of people who read a list apart. And so we just kind of did it. We started doing one-day shows that were like 3 speakers, 2 of whom were me and Jeffrey, and like 100 attendees. And then those got such a response, and so many people came and said, oh God, I wish it had been 2 days that we took a jump to sort of 2-day conferences. And it's just sort of slowly grown from there.
That's so cool. Yeah, I love that, and I love what it's become now. I imagine you must have so many amazing learnings that you've had from over the years of doing this, not just talking to people in the audience, but all these amazing speakers. Do you have any kind of like tidbits of like what I got from the last 10 years out of this? I really felt this was a good piece of personal growth that I could share with people.
The first one was to stop using the term learnings.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, there have been too many, and it's not just from talking to the speakers, it's from talking to the attendees. I mean, we specifically go after an audience that's people who have some experience, who have been at this for a few years. We don't have introduction to CSS talks or, why you should care about accessibility. Right. That kind of thing is just assumed. It's like, if you're at this show, you already know, basically what you're doing, and you want to do better. And so, in a lot of cases, talking to, attendees who will tell me, I was in this situation, in my work, and this is how we solved it. Or, hey, I'm stuck on this thing, do you have any advice for how to get past it? And in conversation, like, I'll learn as much from them as or if not more than they learned from me. I mean, there was if anyone who's seen What Comes Next is the Future, the documentary, I actually talk about this, and some other people did too, like being there when Ethan Marcotte did the first responsive web design talk, which he did at an event apart Seattle in 2010. And just the feeling, like, as the talk went on, the room became sort of more and more electric, right? Like, everyone was just suddenly realizing that here's this thing. This is important. This means something. There have been a lot of moments like that. Probably too many to remember at this point. But yeah, I mean, it's really some of the things I've learned have been things like the importance of communication within a team, as opposed to from outside of the team, to the client or the boss or, stakeholders is a term I hear a lot. some examples of accessibility and why it's important. Even which again, I'm already in, but just to see like literally an example, like Derek Featherstone saying, this is what we saw with a client, like this specific thing. And it just making you see it in a whole new way. I mean, there's just so many like that. I've learned a ton from Jerry McGovern recently about customer focus and tasks and analyzing tasks that the tasks that your site or product should be fulfilling, those kinds of tasks, not the I have to write markup tasks. It's Jeffrey and I have always done our very best to create a show that we would want to attend, like pay to attend, and I feel like we usually hit that mark.
What have you had any like massive issues or flops or that you could share with us that you've had where you plugged in a microphone and it went into another room, or something crazy that happened, or just
our second show ever. So back when we were doing the one-day shows in sort of offbeat venues, our second show was at Turner Field in Atlanta. So like, how maybe you don't know, but every baseball stadium apparently has like this sort of bar/restaurant up in one corner of the
yes.
stadium bowl, where like people rent for wedding receptions and bar mitzvahs and that sort of thing. Well, we that's where we had the second one, and they had said they would provide the internet and everything, and their network guy spent the entire day running around trying to get the network to work, and it never did.
Oh, geez.
That happens sometimes. That was actually, I think that was the same one where we had tried to make sure that we had a wide selection of things. So we had, like hot dogs for the carnivores, and we had baked beans for the vegetarians. Well, it turns out in Atlanta, baked beans have bacon in them.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Not a thing we realized. So, and if anyone was there at the show and was vegetarian, again, our apologies. I mean, there was a salad, but I can imagine what it feels like when you show up to a show as a vegetarian. It's like, do you have anything for vegetarians? There's salad. It's like, thank you for doing the bare minimum. It's probably what that felt like, and I feel a little bad about that still. But we've learned as we've gone. So, the only other thing I can think is right when network backup systems became super popular, we started having network problems.
Of course.
And so we had to develop policies that we still have in place, which is, if a certain IP starts sucking huge amounts of bandwidth in small amounts of time, we will turn it off if we have to. Or dramatically throttle it. This is part of the reason why we now have our own networking staff on hand. We run our own mesh. Sometimes we run our own internet circuit from an ISP. Although these days hotels usually have enough of a outbound pipe that they can give us they can dedicate part of it to us, and we'll be fine. But early on, we would go into a hotel and we would say, hi, we need this much bandwidth. And they would say, that's 3 times as much as the hotel has. Right? So we would say, okay, please put us in touch with your local ISPs and we'll have them run a circuit. And we did. So usually we don't have to run the circuit anymore, thankfully.
Yeah, I think internet has caught up to the point of necessity.
Well, I mean, we still tend to saturate whatever the hotel has given us. So
yeah, I mean, how many people do you normally have at an event?
350 to 400 is about the average.
And they all need internet.
Yeah, and they tell them to all do npm install when they show up.
When at the beginning of the show, well, actually at the beginning of each day, when we do the housekeeping notes, we'll say, just as a reminder, if you got Backblaze, Carbonite, et cetera, please disable it. I should probably put npm in there. It's like, no npm installs here, please.
Yeah, okay, they'll do yarn.
No Netflix streaming.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Maybe you could block Netflix.
We don't block addresses like that usually.
I feel like people aren't going to be Netflixing while they're there.
Yeah.
You're on stage, somebody's watching Full House. This show's pretty good, actually.
You're
I like
naive.
this new version.
I'm telling you, I'm in those audiences. People are doing some crazy stuff, and they're on their computer, they're on their phone. They've got like 3 devices, and then they complain that the internet's crappy, right?
Mm.
I'd imagine there's probably a good number of those kind of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we get too many people too much like that. Or I think we get the people who do the 3 device thing, but usually they don't complain.
Okay.
I'm
going to the wrong shows.
Well, I also do mean probably peppered within like all the shows. You probably have a good amount of people, but yeah,
Sure,
absolutely.
So
So
300 people together, someone's going to complain about something. I mean,
exactly. That's the law. That's how things work.
Oh, yeah.
So what are you actually doing now personally for a job? You have a company, right? What's that about?
I mean, an event apart is most of what I do.
Okay, what about what is it? Complex Spiral?
Yeah, so Complex Spiral Consulting, technically I have a consultancy.
Yeah.
I mean, according to this, I have paperwork filed with the state of Ohio. You know, I have a business.
Legally, you have this business.
Right. And, you know, I mean, it's, I could do stuff. Usually it's, in the past, it's been training, customized training. So let me pick a company that's actually never hired me. Google. So let's say Google, for some reason, has a team that they want to get up to speed on CSS. So they get in touch and they say, you know, hey, this is what we want. So I would actually work with that team to say, can you show me what you're working on, either what you're responsible for or what you've got coming up, and then base the training around that stuff, right? Even though it might be, let's start with the basics of grid. I'm going to use their designs as the basis for that example, so that so that they don't have to try to like parse the designs. Like they know what the design is for, like they know what the pieces are for. I'm just going to show you how to arrange it, as an example. So that's what I haven't done it in a few years. Hasn't been a lot of demand for it, and I haven't been putting out, you know, hey, I'm doing, you know, look at the
hire me.
Right. You know, Event Apart keeps me busy. And writing has kept me busy.
Just a few books, right?
Yeah, a few.
Yeah, I'm actually reading the Design Life one right now. It's pretty good.
Design for Real Life, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book. I was actually watching the talk that he gave on it in 2017, and that was amazing.
Well, and the book wouldn't be even half as good as it was if it weren't for Sarah, my co-author, who brought so much to that book.
Yeah, just the points of like the things too with like a Google. What was it? Was it Google or Facebook sending her some alerts about like Mother's Day and like some of those kind of things that are, you know, are not maybe sensitive to people. Like they could just be doing a better job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could be. It's true.
Yeah, death of a loved one, and it's in your the year in review thing, which that doesn't make sense to me. It's a bad experience. It's an experience I think that not enough designers think about, for sure.
Yeah, I've had that experience twice with Facebook, and it's not pleasant.
No.
Yeah.
Sarah Parmenter actually, she was talking with a company. Oh God, I just blanked on their name, and she's going to be so mad at me. Well, because the thing is, so it's a sort of like a floral, you know, one of these companies that'll ship stuff to your house, you know, presents or whatever, or to somebody else's house, in the UK where Sarah lives. And last year they sent a thing about, you know, remember Mother's Day, and Sarah's mother died quite unexpectedly several years ago. And so she basically wrote back and said, hey, look, you know, have you considered that not, you know, some people, their mothers are dead, they don't have good relationships with their mothers for whatever reason. And she got a response back really fast saying, you're absolutely right, we're really sorry. And like from the CEO. Saying, you know, we're really sorry.
That's great.
Sorry about this. Thank you so much for your insights. We'll take them on board. And this year they did. they actually sent email ahead of Mother's Day in the UK, which is a different date than it is here, but saying, hey, if you want to opt out of Mother's Day mails, like hit this link. They literally got press coverage, like The Guardian or whatever wrote about how and this huge outpouring on Twitter is like, this is the most amazing thing I have ever seen. So Sarah's got a huge success story there. God, I wish I could remember the company name so I could give them
props.
Give them props for having done it. But,
well, if you think about it, just send us a text via Twitter, and we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the points that you're talking about with how do these companies take responsibility? Are they responsible? Like, that company obviously did take responsibility, and they're making big changes, right? But like you were talking about, what was it? Pokemon Go, how they had like a little thing about like, hey, be careful of your surroundings, and then it just progressed into like a modal and more and more and more. But as you were saying, like, were they responsible for that guy that was playing Pokemon Go and accidentally crossed the border into Canada? And what would have happened if those armed guards came and something terrible happened, or that one guy that walked into that abandoned landmine while he was playing Pokemon Go because he's not paying attention?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because the Pokemon Go maps did not take into account where the minefields are in Bosnia or wherever else. So yeah, what responsibility does Niantic have? And the problem is it's a question we haven't really, as an industry, faced. We haven't talked about it. The closest I think we get is, well, of course they're not responsible. Okay, but are you sure?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like you were talking about too, with in the same token, that somebody driving and playing Pokemon, and if they actually got into an accident, like, so what is how does that work legally? Or morally?
So touchy to me, because I feel like you should be intelligent enough not to do those things too. But I know.
If you have a device like that, like an iPhone, and you're driving, isn't there a way to possibly detect something like that? I don't know.
Right. At the time, they were detecting whether or not you were moving quickly enough to be, not walking.
And they disabled it? Or?
Well, they were doing it to disqualify you from like building up walking steps to earn stuff in Pokemon Go.
That's what they did.
But they weren't at the time. At the time, they weren't like disabling the app. They were just saying, oh, you're moving too fast, so you can't qualify for miles to hatch your eggs or whatever the heck it is. And
oh God, no.
Priorities.
Right. Yeah. But since then, since that time, they do that, but they also do hey, you're moving too fast. You should not be using Pokemon Go if you're driving, but you can dismiss it, which actually makes sense because a lot of people who play Pokemon Go are taking public transportation.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't qualify for walking miles necessarily, but there's no reason to lock them out of Pokemon Go just because they happen to be on a subway or a bus, right? And
or a kid in the back of mom's car.
Or a kid in the back, like my kid in the back of my car sometimes. Like, can I play Pokemon Go? It's like, we're driving, so I don't know why, but sure, here you go. Why not? Right, but given that they were already checking, that adds a whole new layer of what level of responsibility did they have to try to enforce some safety guidelines.
Yeah, right? At least prompt,
Right. If you build a road, are you also liable for putting up guardrails?
Yeah, I mean, I think another good comparison would be like a car and a seatbelt, how it has the annoying alarm. It's like ding, ding, until you put it on. So, yeah.
Well, what about companies that take things, like obviously that the one thing you also discussed in that video referring to the book was the Burger King commercial where they were saying, hey, if you want to find more things about the Whopper, hey, Google, I'm not going to say it, but,
okay,
but like they said that and like find out more things about, their hamburger. And that was a big thing. Is that responsible, or is that someone taking advantage of a technology in an irresponsible way? What do we think?
Yeah, that's a good question. What are the rest?
Is it? Yeah, I don't know if it's smart, but it's certainly not a life-threatening scenario. But Yeah, not that one specifically, but you know, they're not only are they leveraging an interesting new technology, but it's like we pointed out, or like you pointed out in the video, it was only a 15-second ad too that they had to pay for.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like anything involving fast food is is life risking.
Well, so a similar point I had there, actually right after that in the talk, if I remember correctly, was there's a news story about how a guy came over to his girlfriend's house and was really mad at her for whatever, I didn't get all the details.
Story. Yeah,
that story, and pulls a gun on her and is shouting at her, "Did you call the cops? Did you call the cops?" Alexa called the cops, right? And the cops showed up and saved her, which sounds great. But then you think about how many movies am I watching where someone shouts something like, "There's a terrorist in the building, call the SWAT team." What happens if Alexa responds to that? And a SWAT team shows up and uses the breaching grenades to get into the house because they think there's a terrorist. Now what?
What the?
Or what? The other point you were making too is you could set some kind of precedent of only recognize when it's coming out of a human voice. But then what if you have the scenario of, say, some kid playing a video game and he's talking smack with somebody on the other end saying, "Yeah, kill him, blah, 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 call the SWAT team."
Right.
And we're round robin, right?
Yep. There we are again.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what level of responsibility do they have? They didn't force you to take the Google Home or the Amazon Echo or whatever the heck they're called now, right? Nobody forced you to put the always listening device in your house. But at the same time, they made a certain promise if you put it in your house that it would do X, Y, and Z and not these other things.
Yeah.
And yet, people ask me how many Google Homes and similar devices I have in my house, and I tell them none. I have none.
I have none either.
Yeah.
I don't understand the appeal, to be honest. I don't understand why you would want something listening to you, and I don't know. I just don't get it.
I have them, but it's always unplugged unless I'm using it, and then I use it more as a smart speaker to be like, "Hey, play this podcast," things like that. But speaking of responsibility, we have a responsibility to ask some audience questions. And Sarah, would you like to? We have a few audience questions. Would you like to ask the first one, Sarah?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is my first time, Eric, in case you haven't noticed.
Come down in the show doc post.
It's fun.
Where am I seeing these audience questions?
Number 2 in the show doc. For our audience, we have a show doc.
Yeah.
I do. They tried to prepare me for this, and I obviously am failing.
Yeah. And
we are very grateful for you co-hosting the show with us today.
You'll get a hang of it.
Yeah.
I'm doing my best, doing my best here. It's, this is what you get. Beggars can't be choosers. So I do see these questions now. So the first question we have is, what do you think about AMP? AMP?
Not many good things.
Well, then I want to hear more.
Yeah.
So I understand some of the. No, let me backtrack that.
Not even I understand.
Hot drama. Here it comes.
So I get the pitch. It's strip stuff down and it will be faster. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't require this special markup set and all this other stuff to make that happen. Google could literally say, you know what? The higher your Lighthouse score, the higher your whatever performance score, the higher that will rank you. Sites which are sufficiently fast, when we index them, we're going to put them into the cool carousel, right? Which right now is reserved for AMP. And they say, we want the web to be faster. No, you want your technology to make people's experience faster. If you wanted the web to be faster, you would actually reward good markup rather than trying to impose your own. The broad sort of structure of it, you have to have below a certain amount of CSS and either no JavaScript or incredibly limited JavaScript. I don't remember what the parameters are right now, but those sorts of things. Okay, Sure, but they could have just as easily said, if you do these things, they will boost you, though you'll be more likely to land in this carousel or whatever, or be higher ranked because your site will be faster, and so we will prioritize your site because it will give our users a better experience. But that's not how they did it. So,
all right.
Well said. I think you made a really good point about rewarding better markup.
Yeah, just rewarding better performance. It's, whether it's div soup, I mean, okay, that's not great, but if it's really fast div soup, that's from Google's perspective a better user experience than a really well structured document that takes 10 seconds to load for whatever reason, right?
Yeah. It's kind of funny when you look at like the static website and like couldn't you just make a static website and then it would be nice and fast like you're trying to do? But
right.
I want to make sure to ask this next question before we get to the other ones, because it's someone I know wanted me to ask it. So they wanted to know about dealing with large code bases, and have you any tips regarding it? Because it always seems to end up spaghetti code, no matter, over time. Eventually, the more people that get into it, the more it becomes a mess.
Yeah, so I have not worked with the kind of large code bases that people usually mean when they talk about large code bases. I do think that any sufficiently large code base will spaghettify, regardless of what language it is, what practices you adopt. It doesn't go Rust, Haskell. It doesn't matter. You get big enough, and it's going to spaghettify. And
I love that, spaghettify.
Yeah, well, you said spaghetti code.
I did.
Yeah. I think it's inevitable. Any large complex system eventually starts to become too complex in non-obvious ways, right? I mean, we can see that in corporate structures and government structures, and right, those are also large flowcharts of a sort, and sometimes parts of the flowchart conflict, just like in our code. So, I think it depends a lot on who's in your team and what makes sense for them. So for some people, something like Atomic CSS makes a lot of sense, or Tailwind, like utility type CSS, makes a lot of sense for another team, because that's just sort of how that team thinks and operates. People would argue about how BEM was either the greatest thing or the worst thing, and it didn't have much to do with BEM. It had to do with the people who were taking those positions. For someone that model made sense, it was the best thing, and for someone who didn't get it, it was terrible. And that's always going to be the case. So, try to pick an approach and stick with it, I think, is the generic advice I would give.
But there's a shiny new way of doing it over here,
right? And also, pick an approach and stick with it gets you further than a lot of other approaches, but it will only get you so far before the spaghettification will start creeping in. Complex systems are just sort of inevitably succumb to chaos over time.
Sarah, do you want to do the next one? Oh,
I just wanted that was I feel like that was a metaphor for life right there. Like that was just I mean, it just is a reflection of people and the way we do things. So I was pretty deep. Okay, next one. Sorry. So new technologies. What new technologies are you most excited about?
So for me, let's see. I mean, in the CSS realm, grid, widespread, consistent Flexbox support, but mostly grid, subgrid, which I was actually doing subgrid designs today in Firefox Nightly, and it was working for the most part. I may have found a slight bug, but I actually reached out to them to see if it's their fault or mine. Let's see. WebP has me kind of interested. Yeah. There's always that support question, right? Because older browsers get nothing, but there are ways of setting up markup so that you can do fallbacks, right? So that's I'll give you a WebP, and if you don't understand WebP, then here's the PNG alternative, and if you don't understand PNG, here's a JPEG, and things like that. But WebP, just the compression possibilities there, and along with that, HTTP2 and constant streaming. rather than every asset being its own connection, just opening up a connection and stuffing everything down that one connection is actually really useful for network performance. I'm trying to think if there are any other technologies that have gotten me really psyched recently.
And it doesn't have to be a web technology, any kind of technology.
Yeah, no, I spend most of my time thinking about the web. So.
Yeah, I figured.
There's stuff outside of the web.
Wait, what?
Autos, which is what I call self-driving cars, they aren't here yet, so I can't get excited about that.
What do you call them?
Autos.
I like that.
Because
before you know it,
that's what they keep saying.
I was gonna say they've been saying that for a long time. Like,
yeah,
I think I know it's not going to happen anytime soon. That's what I know.
You think so?
I don't think so.
10 years.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like autonomous vehicles are going to be one of those things that happen slowly and then very fast.
Yeah.
But that slowly can stretch out much longer than people think it will. But then, suddenly it'll be one of those things where it's like, it's never coming, and then suddenly a year later, it's like, God, now it's everywhere. What happened? And it doesn't seem like we're there yet, but we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if we get mostly autonomous highway driving in the next 5 or so years.
Highway driving, like, do you mean like commercial vehicles such as trucks, like going down that road?
Well, but any vehicle that uses an interstate.
Okay.
Because you don't have traffic lights, you don't have pedestrians. Hopefully,
it's almost like a train.
Almost.
Yeah.
But those kinds of that scenario, the interstate highway scenario is a much smaller problem space. Like fully autonomous cars driving around cities with pedestrians and traffic lights and everything, I think that'll be a while. But all it takes is like 1 or 2 major computing breakthroughs or code breakthroughs to make that better. So then all of a sudden it happens all at once. Anyway,
then we got quantum Teslas and driving us everywhere, right?
Teslas. Whoa!
I just want the flying cars. Really, that's what I want.
Heck yeah! Well, Marty McFly to pick me up and take me over to Doc's house, see what's going on.
Well, I think that's it for my answer on this one.
He's done. Over.
So does your family understand? Family and friend? Do your family and friends understand what you do?
I think most of them, at least at a basic level. And when we say family, I mean, if you mean my immediate family, then I mean, I've had enough practice describing my niche of, my technological niche of the web that I think they get it at least a basic level. And it's not like it was 20 years ago when I would say, so I write about display technologies for the web. Right. So the web is right. You don't have to have that conversation anymore. They know what the web is. So I can say, how one site looks different than another one? Yeah, that I'm talking about that stuff.
You make stuff that appears on my phone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I help other people make stuff that appears on your phone. That's actually my role is to teach people who create this stuff. Right. So how does CSS work? Here's how CSS works, so that they can then go out and after they've read CSS the Definitive Guide, they can create grid layouts or they can create custom counters or whatever in order to deliver a better experience.
Nice. Yeah. I wanted to ask you this one. I like this question here because I think a lot of people could relate to it. Again, an audience question. Have you ever felt and do you ever feel imposter syndrome?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I think I probably did earlier in my life. I certainly did in school. But once I got out and started working professionally, I mean, but I think what helps me with that is remembering that the people who feel imposter syndrome rarely ever should, and the people who don't feel imposter syndrome are the ones who should, usually. And also that as you move along in life, you realize that everybody's making it up as they go in everything, we're going back to that, lessons for life. It's not just food. We're all making it up. Like eventually, especially in my case, I reached a point where I said, wait a minute. I remember when my dad was the age that I am now. And I bet he didn't have any more clue about what he was doing than I do now. Right? Or mom, like mom, dad, but he was making it up as he went. Everyone's making it up as they go. And coming to grips with that, sort of letting that settle in and be sort of in the marrow, has pretty much done away with imposter syndrome, because you realize that everyone's sort of an imposter, and yet none of us are, right? Because we're all trying to figure it out. Like there's no instruction manual for life. There's no instruction manual for the best way to write code. Like I know there've been plenty of books about writing clean code, and yet I know that the people who read those books, like 3 years later, are like, oh my God, I know I read that book, and yet my code was so terrible after I read it. It was better than it was, but it was still terrible, and now it's better. I've finally gotten it cleaned up, and then 3 years later, like, oh my God, that was so terrible, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of thing.
Sarah, do you want to get another one of those questions?
Let me see.
We got one more.
We got one more. So I see we've got something you miss about pre-modern web.
Oh, something I miss about pre-modern web. Web rings.
Web rings.
Well, yeah.
Oh my God. I thought I was pretty old. Web rings. You've stumped me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're talking mid-90s here, early to mid-90s.
Okay.
A web ring was where you would have like the Babylon 5 web ring, where you had a page or a site, but let's say a page about Babylon 5.
Yeah, and then you could click through to another one.
There was like a next previous, and it would take you to someone else's site, and you would register as sort of a central ring thing.
Yeah.
And it would sort of take you around this. So eventually, like if you got through the whole list, you would come back to the site where you started, thus web ring. Of course,
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. See. Yeah.
I wasn't privy to that.
I missed that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there'd usually be like the overly bubbly buttons at the bottom of the page, and you'd click, and it was a completely different website you're going to, but they're all like interconnected. Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. That was pretty cool.
Let's bring it back.
Yeah.
Web ring coming back.
I miss the preferences in Mosaic. So in the original, like Mosaic 1, you could set the appearance of every HTML element in terms of font face from the list of font faces that were supported, which was not many, but still you could choose a face, a size, and a color for every element in HTML. You could make H6s huge if you wanted. You could make pre be in a non-monospace font, and you could turn all the pre's to be gray or whatever, right? Just right there in the browser. This is before CSS. Right, so you could do that. You were basically building a user style sheet before there was such a thing, and I always liked that. Opera did that for quite a while. Netscape dropped it, and nobody else picked it up besides Opera.
That'd be a nice accessibility thing to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
there are extensions for it, but
there are extensions, right? You can use Stylish or something like that to write a little CSS to do the same kind of thing, and actually much more powerfully, right? Because literally you could set like those three things about a given element. You couldn't set a background color. You couldn't put a border around it. You couldn't, or next to it, you couldn't put in a little symbol beforehand if that would help you in some way. Now you can do all that stuff. Like anything CSS will let you do, you can do to every site you visit. But yeah, I miss that because it was a way for people to like me to sort of get a grip on, okay, so each of these is a piece of a structure, and I can affect pieces of that structure. Right. So
I still remember not having an inspector and like the horror of having to look at the actual source code completely and understand what was going on. Very, very different.
Yeah.
Well, think about when the web was just one color. It was that light gray color, and that's all you had.
Black on light gray. Actually, I thought of a third thing I miss.
Or green.
I did think of a third thing I missed, and then I lost it again.
Oh, Brian,
thanks, Brian.
My fault.
Cut this part out. We'll fix it in post. God, what was it? That's it. Uppercase tags.
Uppercase tags.
So your HTML markup could be all uppercase. And it can, again, by the way, HTML5 is case insensitive.
Yeah, I was about to say, you can do that now. So, I mean, you don't have to miss it. You can.
No,
you can do
I don't. And in fact, I've started mixing it up a little bit in my source. But everyone does it lowercase because of XHTML. XHTML was case sensitive.
Yeah, I got to say, like, I'm in that habit. And I'm probably opposite of you. Like, I see a mix or I see all uppercase, and it just kind of like, it's like nails on a chalkboard. I'm like, because I'm just so conditioned to do everything lowercase.
Yep. That was XHTML1. That's what did it.
Yeah, the condition I keep doing is with image tags, where I keep feeling like I need to close it.
Oh yeah, I always want to have that slash. I always want to close the image tag.
You can. HTML5 allows that too.
You can.
But
I don't have to.
Yeah, I'm always like, oh, it needs a closing.
Yeah.
Feels wrong not to.
It does for me. I agree.
Can I ask a question, since we're running short of time? I wanted to ask this. What, being the guy of CSS here, what is the, and I'll add a little bit to this, but in a general sense, what is the future of CSS? What are some of the things that people could be spending their time right now thinking about to be productive 3 years from now, as far as like, I don't know, like styling things for like voice or inflection or AR or different kind of layouts? Like, you know what, you should really focus on this when you're using CSS Grid. That's going to be the future. Anything like that you could think of?
I think we're still coming to grips with what Grid and Flexbox will mean for layout. And I don't think we know yet what people should be focusing on. Jen Simmons has been exploring this for a few years now, that, you know, our web design patterns were very much sort of structured around floats and the layout tools that we had, which was mostly floats, right? And so not having a full height column background is because floats made that really hard. Not because it's a bad idea necessarily. It was very hard to do. So we stopped doing it and started taking our limitations as, this is good design, but maybe it's not, right? Maybe there's better design that ignores some of those rules, but we're still trying to figure that out. And I think experimenting and trying to help figure that out will be a lot of the work of the next few years when it comes to web design. When it comes to like voice UI, right now that feels to me mostly like a UX problem. Not a design problem necessarily, and CSS isn't really set up to help with that at this point. We used to have Aural styles, but they kind of died because that was 10 years ago, and we weren't doing voice UI, so like it was basically meant for screen readers, and had some cool stuff in it. In fact, the degrees, the degree values. The degree unit, that's what I'm trying to say. Degree values were originally in Aural CSS because you could specify an azimuth and elevation to position a sound in three-dimensional space. Now we use them to rotate stuff using transform, but that's where degree units got their start. So that might come back, but I don't think we're there yet. So like I say, I think things like speaking is a UX problem. It's a, what do we want to expose to the user? Like when they speak, what do we want to respond to? What do we want to not respond to? How do we want to respond to them? That's all, to me, that's all UX. It's not really style.
Well, what about like, I don't know what future this is, but what about a future where I have when I ask Brian's Alexa to read me a story, and it's reading from a website, and I could say, you know, and in this part, in CSS, include this music, or, you know, make the inflection of the voice more like, ooh, you know, like
that was actually all in Aural CSS. Aural being AURAL CSS.
Does that come back, or do we go, you know what, let's revisit that?
I guess I think it will get revisited. Whether or not those properties come back that feels a little unlikely. Although I don't know, there was so little implementation of them that the working group might decide that the field's open to just bring them back with some improvements. I can't speak for the working group, so I don't know. But maybe, then again, maybe not. They might decide to go a whole new route. But yeah, I think that will come. But I don't think it's coming soon.
Well, I know I'm talking about things that could happen, might happen, but what are some of the things that we should be looking at as far as you should really focus on this because this is what things are going to be like in 2 to 3 years?
And if I knew that, I would have already cashed in on the stock market, my man.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Or that would be the new book.
What do you think of Houdini?
I find it very interesting. I find it a little weird.
Yeah.
At the same time, I find it interesting because it's from what I can tell, from what I have seen, it's extend CSS using Canvas, which is interesting. And I guess that's a little bit like Grid. I'm not sure where we're gonna go with that as a field. Is Canvas as far as it's going to go? Like, I don't know. I am a little worried about it. I feel like for some browser vendors, and I'm not going to name any names, but for some browser vendors, they feel like we'll give them CSS Houdini and then we can just ignore CSS for the rest of our lives because they can do whatever they want. They can just write their own magic Canvas stuff and we don't have to worry about it. And I would hate to see that happen. I would hate to see that be the actual path things take because there's always an advantage to having stuff supported natively. Right? If we want scribbly underlines, okay, maybe we can use Houdini to figure out cool scribbly underlines, and then 3/4 of the web is suddenly using them because they look awesome. Then the CSS working group should write that down to say, okay, here's an actual property you can use. Text decoration value, here's a value, text decoration scribble or whatever, and here's how you affect it. And I worry sometimes that there are some browser implementers who just feel like, God, if we just get Houdini out the door and get them using it, then they can go away and we don't have to interface with authors again. And I would hate, like I say, I'd hate to see that happen. You get old enough and you start to fear things, I guess. That's what it is. Or you've seen it all enough times. It's like, oh geez. I remember the last time something like this came along and what happened as a result of that.
It's funny how a lot of those things come back around.
Yeah, it's my pinned tweet is those who do not study history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do study history are doomed to watch it repeated by those who didn't study.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah. Sarah, Brian, you got anything?
We have a few minutes. It'd be nice to do a few lightning round questions.
Lightning round questions. Eric, you ready?
We had a thunderstorm here earlier today, so I'm more than ready.
Yeah, that's basically we basically asked a bunch of questions quickly. Anything from favorite pizza to bagel to I'm food oriented right now, and then you answer it, and we move on.
Okay,
Brian's hungry.
Speaking of which, favorite pizza topping.
Single or as a combo?
Both.
Okay. My favorite single pizza topping is probably salami.
Oh,
nice.
In strips. And then my favorite combo is bacon, artichoke hearts, black olives, and roasted pine nuts on a pesto sauce.
All right.
This is really specific. I did not expect that level of pizza topping.
He knows his pizza.
Damn.
I know what
you go next, Sarah.
Oh my God. Favorite band?
Rush.
Really?
Yeah.
Let me ask you.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, okay. Let me ask you this, Tom Sawyer. So you come home, and it's the middle of the night, 1 a.m. You open your front door, you see a ghost. What do you do?
To take a selfie with it.
Nice. Well said. Brian?
I was going to say about the band, I actually haven't listened to Rush for in a while. They've stopped putting out new albums because they basically retired, but they've been the band I've listened to the most consistently throughout my life. So anyway, Brian, you're up.
What's the last thing you did just for yourself?
Just for myself? Good Lord. This is a difficult question to ask a father, because it's I don't know how to answer that. The last thing I did myself was I cooked dinner for my son and me. So, and then I came up here.
Fair enough.
Good enough, sir.
All right, it's my turn. So and now as a parent myself, I'm curious. You said son. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
I have two. Joshua's 8 and Carolyn is 15 and a half.
Okay, all right.
Oh, my turn. So do you play an instrument?
I do not regularly play an instrument
regularly.
Yeah, when I was so there's drums. But when I was a kid, I actually studied both piano and violin for almost a decade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you think you could pick it up and just...
Hey, that's another question.
The violin, yes, probably. The piano, I mean, I can still do basic tunes on a piano. And, with the piano, I could probably get back into it with, a little bit of time, not a huge amount. Violin, probably pick up. Not and be at the same level I was, but again, I could, like sight read music and slowly and that sort of thing. Anyway.
Oh, nice.
What really gets on your nerves?
The list is long but distinguished.
Just pick one.
Really gets on my nerves. Apostrophe errors in public signage.
Sarah?
Yeah.
God, I feel like it's like this is too lightning. Like we need to slow this lightning down. By the time we get back to me, I'm like, I don't even know what to ask. I'm prepared for this more. So travel, favorite place that you've visited?
Oh wow, Guilin, China.
Ooh.
It's a city on the Lijiang River, the Jiang River, or the Li River, excuse me, where it's one of those areas that has a bunch of karst formations. So the hills are like, and there's just a bunch of them everywhere, like these outcroppings in this otherwise flat landscape. And there's this river goes through it. And the last time I was there, which admittedly was 20 years ago on my honeymoon, the river was so clear you could see the bottom. Right. And this is an actual river, right? Like with traffic, and yet you could see the riverbed because the water was so clear. You could see the fish and everything. And it was just such a beautiful, such a beautiful place. I haven't been back since, and I would like to someday. But a very close second is the Netherlands in Amsterdam.
It's funny. I just went to Amsterdam the beginning of this year to visit some friends. Mm-hmm. And while I think the Netherlands are beautiful, I found Amsterdam to be disappointing. It was, and I did go around New Year's, so it was very busy. But I feel like the tourists, I didn't really get a sense of the people that live there. It was more a sense of the flood of tourists, and everything seemed to be for tourists versus the actual people that live there.
Yeah, I've been a few times, and I know a couple of people who live there, so I've been able to sort of see more of the city, and to get past the tourist floods. I know what you're talking about, though.
You had the authentic experience.
Semi-authentic. It's not like I get an afternoon with somebody. I don't get to sort of like live in an apartment for a month, which I've thought about trying, but family.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, we are at the end of the show, and so the best. What's the?
You know what? I gotta say, you said we were going to get back to the coffee and chocolate at the top of the show.
Oh, that's true. We never did.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, so from my understanding, your mom was waiting to give you a piece of chocolate. You tried the chocolate, and you were like, bleh.
Yep, spit it out. 6 months old.
Now, what type of chocolate was it? Milk or dark?
Doesn't matter, because I've tried them all since, and I can't stand any of them.
Even white?
Wow, can't stand them.
Even white.
White chocolate's not really chocolate. It's
White's
just
the
butter.
worst. Oh.
Well, yeah, it's the butter of the chocolate.
See, to me, white is less repulsive than the others, but it's still repulsive.
It is repulsive.
And coffee repulsive?
Yep. I've tried. I've literally done take a coffee cup, fill it this much with coffee, and then fill it the rest of the way with cream and sugar, and I still can't stand
It's
it.
about
what about like an actual,
by the way, for our audio listeners?
Like, have you had a good cup of coffee though? Because like most people have had coffee and they're like, oh, I don't like coffee because it's bitter. No, I'm just asking. Hold on. Most coffee is
You're not going to change his mind.
But a real cup of coffee tastes like nice. Like it has a sweet taste to it.
Maybe the next time we're together, you can acquire a good cup of coffee, and I'll try it, and then you can have the rest of it.
I will make this my mission. That's
there we
happening.
go.
Have you've tried cold brew too? Because that's the one that's probably the smoothest. I'm not trying to convince him. I'm genuinely curious if he's tried it.
I'm sure he has.
I get this a lot because it is, and I totally get it. Who doesn't like both coffee and chocolate? Like I get that that's a rarity, and it's if I cared what other people actually thought of my habits, it would be difficult to admit this in public. I've actually admitted this in a talk, and I've said, "Hey,
did people walk out?"
Well, I've said, "Hands up, who shares this with me?" And I'll see one or two hands go up, and then sometimes I'll see one person go, like, put their hand up a little bit, look around and put it down again. I'll be like, I saw that. I'm not going to out you, but I saw it. I saw that.
Think about how much money he has saved over a lifetime.
That's right.
Think about it.
Yeah, and I'm just going to throw this out. I feel the same way about alcohol. In college, I saved so much friggin' money.
Yeah,
it's like, hey guys, I'm thinking about going out to dinner. Oh, we're broke. Yeah, not me. I mean, comparatively speaking, we were all.
But most alcohols you're not into, like beer, wine.
Oh God, Fred, here we go. Here we go again.
I'll tell you what I like: ice wine.
Ice wine.
I'll let you look up ice wine.
I'm curious about the chocolate though. Like, is it? Well, no. I want to know. I just want to know more about it. Like, chocolate, like chocolate chip cookies. Anything with chocolate you just don't like, or is there correct? Like, period? Okay.
Yeah. Yep. My daughter Carolyn is a pretty good baker. So is my wife Kat. But Carolyn, when she makes chocolate chip cookies, she'll make 4 or 6 of them without chocolate chips for me.
So what's your dessert of choice then? Because chocolate's the big dessert option.
Guess what? I know.
So what's your go-to then?
I've noticed. I like a cheesecake with some like raspberry or strawberry on top. Cherry's good too.
All right.
Yeah, a good cheesecake, a good creme brulee. But honestly, when we go for sushi, my favorite dessert is unagi, which is broiled river eel with sweet sauce on top.
Oh, dude.
Sweet savory sauce.
You were speaking my language right there. Yum.
Yeah, that's like literally my dessert sometimes when I go for sushi. Is bring me some unagi.
All right.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, now.
Yeah, we've gone over. I'm sorry.
No. Sorry. I want to be respectful of your time. So, what's the best way people could get a hold of you? Is it your Twitter, your website? How do you want people to get a hold of you?
Well, so on almost every social network that I'm on, MeyerWeb is my handle, like on Twitter, twitter.com/MeyerWeb, because my website is meyerweb.com, MEYERWEB.com. People can find me there. They can find me on Twitter. They can, eric@meyerweb.com is my email address. It's however you get in touch with me is cool. I can't promise that I'll respond speedily. And I can't promise that my answer will be the one you want to hear, but because about once a week I get people saying, hey, can you fix your WordPress theme for me? And it's because the WordPress theme that they have uses the CSS reset that has my URL in it. So they find my site and they eventually find my contact address and they think that I'm the one. Yeah, anyway. So about once a month I have to send an email to someone saying, yeah, sorry, I can't because I didn't make it. Good luck. But yeah, those are the general ways to get in touch with me. And if you spot me in an airport yelling, "Hey, you," that often works too.
Nice. Okay. Make sure that you reach out to Eric at the airport when you see him. You heard it here. And last thing we love to ask the guest, Eric, is do you have any final kind of parting words of wisdom for people, things they should be thinking about, anything that you'd like to bestow upon our audience?
Remember, you don't have to be mean. No matter where you go, there you are.
All right.
Thank you, Buckaroo Banzai. Or we ripped that off from Buckaroo Banzai. But they're still words of wisdom.
There's a lot of value in that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us, man.
Thank
you. Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, super appreciate it. And thank you again, Sarah, for guest hosting the show. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
And thanks, everybody, for watching. Please subscribe. Go to the little subscribe thing. Hit the notifications. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Take care.